Greetings and welcome to the pod. My name is Mark West, and have you ever been tempted to swim nude with 1,000 other people in the middle of winter? John Stagg has completed the Dark Mofo Nude Solstice Swim every year since its inception. So what makes someone swim nude in the middle of the Tasmanian winter? John has some fabulous stories. He even did it himself when the event was cancelled due to COVID. I started by asking John what attracted him to nude swimming.
Look, there probably isn't a great attraction to nude swimming. The reason I got in it in the first place was Lee Carmichael and the Dark Mofo crew were doing a lot of their planning in the cafe where I work. So it's just near the Mercury building, and they were based in the Mercury at the time. And it was the first year, but no one knew where the Dark Mofo was going to work. I guess there's been a lot of things in the middle of winter that people have tried to get happening that none of them have really kept going or taken off. And I guess I and a lot of other people were sort of hopeful that this one would work. And the nude swim, I thought, was a pretty out there idea, and there was a pretty negative reception to it. The police cancelled it. They said, you can't do it, it's public nudity, we're not going to allow it. And a lot of people were saying, I don't know, it shouldn't go ahead for this reason or another. And I thought, well, damn it, I'm going to support Lee and the Dark Mofo people because they're supporting my cafe and they're really nice people, and it might never happen again. And so that's one of the reasons I did it. Another one was I've got a friend whose name's Peter. I'm sure he doesn't want me to use his last name because he was very high up in the legal world working for the government, and he came into me. I used to be friends with his son when I was at uni, so it gives you an idea of how old he is. He's a generation older than me, and he said, John, I don't think this will ever happen again. I want stories to tell my grandkids. So don't tell anyone I'm doing it, but I'm going to do it, and I'll meet you down there. And so, of course, I told everyone. So he then told everyone, I'm not doing it. That's a stupid rumour. I wouldn't do anything so crazy. And I actually went down there for the first year, and I saw him in the back row, and he was there. And, afterwards he gave me the big thumbs up. But they're probably the two reasons why I got into it. One was to support Lee and the Dark Mofo guys. And two, my friend Peter just sort of planted that seed that, it was just something a bit weird and a bit wacky, and it may never happen again. So I thought, I'll be in this. And we did. And I don't know how you've looked into it, but that first year, if you looked in the last couple of years, there's thousands of people down there and registrations fill out, and you think there was this wonderfully supported event. But in the first year, there was almost nobody. There was a lot more spectators and press than there were swimmers. And they managed to fit every single person into... I don't know if you've been down. Have you been down where it happens?
No, I haven't.
They've got a boat shed where the kayakers store their kayaks. It's just a little boat shed. And they got every single person in there getting changed. And then they ran probably getting ahead of myself a bit here, but I just remember everyone was in there and everyone was sort of half nervous, half scared, half excited. And they ran that roller door up, and everyone just cheered and screamed and hooted and hollered, and then we went sprinting down to the beach. It was such an electric atmosphere, and I guess the atmosphere of that first day when they wound up the roller door is probably where I kept going. It was just such a great feeling, a great thing to be part of, and it's certainly a lot different now, but that first year was just fantastic.
So what's the technique then? Is the technique just to, once the roller door goes up, sprint and dive in and just get in as quick as you can? Or do you hesitate and take it slow? How does it work?
Oh, there's no taking it slow. They can't even close to getting everyone in that shed anymore. Now you just get changed where you stand. I see every bit of spare ground down there is taken up, and there must be thousands of people down there now. That first year, I don't know how many there were, but 20, 40, 60 people. It wasn't a lot. But yeah, now you sort of get changed where you stand. But technique for getting in, don't stop. Just don't even think about it. When the gun goes, just run and don't stop till your head's wet, and then you got to make a decision about what you do. You keep swimming, or you turn around and get out.
Are there requirements on how long you have to stay in there to, I don't know, join the Winter Solstice Club or whatnot, or is it just you just got to get in and that's what counts?
Yeah, I think so. You've got to get wet. I make sure I get my head wet every year. But I had a friend, his name was Bill. Sadly, he's passed away now. And he said, I want to do it. And he must have been in his 80s. And he just ran down and got into his knees and then turned around and ran out. And I reckon if he'd gone much deeper, that would have knocked him off the perch. I guess you don't really want to put pressure on people at that stage of their life so you got to dump in and you got to swim all the way out to the pontoon, because they've got a row of the surf lifesavers. There's a row of surf lifesavers on paddle boards out, probably, I don't know, 30 metres out or so. And for a lot of people, you swim out and you high five a lifeguard and then you turn around and swim back in. But that's a pretty fair effort if you get a cold day. And there've been a couple of cold days over the years. I don't know if you know what the Bridgewater Jerry is, but the Bridgewater Jerry is a fog that comes rolling down the Derwent Valley. And when it comes through, the temperature usually drops about 5 degrees in Hobart. And one year it just came rolling in just as it started, and bloody hell, it was cold.
Well, I mean, Hobart in the middle of winter is not famously the warmest place on earth anyway. So
no, look, it's not at all. There was one year there was ice on the grass, and it was just bitter. There was one year I ended up with hypothermia, and my wife had to finish dressing me, and she put me in the car and turned the heater on the car and left me in the car for about an hour. But I think I wised up after that. Don't go swimming around for like 20 minutes in the water. Just get in and get out.
What is the water temperature like at that time?
Oh, look, it's not that bad. I think it might get down to, I don't know, a bit below 10 on a cold year, depending on whether there's been a lot of rain or a southerly swell. I actually went for a swim yesterday, and it's still moderately warm. It's probably about 12, 14 degrees at the moment.
So the air would be cold, much colder in the morning than the water.
Yeah, it's absolutely bitter. And I think the key is sort of staying warm. One year the surf lifesavers, I think, were really concerned, and they made a point of having a big briefing. And they did it, it was probably about 40 minutes before the event started, and they gave a big safety briefing and everything. And might have been the second year or the third year, but there were a lot more people than had been there in previous years. And they thought, well, that's the safety briefing. We better get our kit off. And there was about half an hour to go to the swim. Had all these people standing around with no kit on, just a towel, for about half an hour. And they were hauling people out by their hair that year. There were so many people got dangerously cold. Oh. It was, whereas there's a mate I do it with, and we just stay fully rugged up with our beanies and gloves and balaclavas and everything until there's about 2 minutes to go. I think that's probably the trick. Just don't get warm and cold beforehand. Run in, run out. That's about it.
So what changed with the public perception, do you think? You know, all of a sudden, was it just the success of the event and seeing people come together?
I think so. I think just about everyone that would have done it in the first year, and I guess I probably knew quite a few people that did it in the first year, it being Hobart, and most of the people I spoke to said the same thing as I did. It was just this really electric atmosphere and this sort of doing something crazy together, and how it was just such a positive feeling, and they would have spoken to their friends and that would have promoted it. But I think also in that first year, because it had got a lot of publicity, because the police trying to shut it down, and Dark Mofo's first year, I had people ring me up, like my brother in Melbourne said, saw you in the paper. I think it was in the Australian or the Age or something. And because there were such small numbers, If you were there, you got seen.
You get identified.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel. I reckon there were more photographers and spectators the first years than there were swimmers, and you're sort of there feeling just slightly uncomfortable. What are all these people doing here? And I did hear a story that in that first year, there's a park, Alexandra Battery, up above the beach, and that one of the local photography clubs went up there that morning to practice their zoom technique.
Oh,
Yeah, look, I'm
Yeah.
not sure I believe that one, but there was someone that told me that was in the club. I said, oh, yeah, we went up there to practice our zoom technique. I said, really? Yeah. Teacher said it'd be a good idea to blah, blah, blah. I've never checked the veracity of that story, but I've heard it.
It's interesting. Like other events I've seen like this, there's a Canberra solstice swim, and there's been various other things pop up over time. They don't allow spectators. So it's interesting that they were allowing spectators. Do they still allow spectators now?
Well, they don't allow spectators, but in the first year, I think the press contingent was enormous. And then there were supporters of the people that were in there. Like my wife went down to help me in that first year. If she hadn't been there, I think it would have been a lot of trouble. I was so cold. And so there were a lot of other people there, and then other people went, oh, I'll just go down. And I don't know whether they're just people going down to watch the event or whether it's just a lot of people supporting their friends or their husbands and wives or whoever. I don't know, but there's a lot of people down there that aren't swimming, a lot of people.
And you did it last year by yourself, even though the event was cancelled.
Who told you that?
Oh, I've got my sources.
So I wanted to keep it going. I really enjoy it, and I wanted to keep the continuity going. So I went down there, and there was absolutely no one there. It was quite early, and I've stripped my kit off and put my gear on the picnic tables there, and I'm jogging down to the beach. And another bloke turned up and said, oh, beauty, I'm not the only one here. I said, yeah, me too. And I went and swam and came out as he went in, and I said, oh, maybe a few other people will be here. And I went back to where my gear was, and a lady came up to me and says, oh, do you think my gear will be okay here on the table? I said, yeah, sure. I can't see a problem with that at all. She said, yeah, I'm just going to walk my dog around to the point there, and then she stopped. And then she looked at me, and she looked up, and she looked down, and about that point I realised she wasn't swimming, she was walking a dog, and about that point she realised I wasn't wearing a stitch of clothing. And she picked up her clothes, and she turned around and she walked off. I had nothing to say to that. I just sort of watched her go and, okay, and then towed down and got changed and got out of there.
Yeah, there's probably a fair bit different between being one nude person on a beach versus 1,000. So you said you went swimming recently as well. Are you an avid ocean swimmer? Is it something you do all the time?
Oh, look, not really. I've always swam a bit, but I'm not one of the mad keen swimmers that swims all year round. I've got a thick wetsuit and I try and swim, I don't know, maybe once a week. But no, you certainly wouldn't describe me as one of the mad keen ocean swimmers.
So you go out in a wetsuit normally in the Tasmanian winter?
About this time. That might have actually been my last swim yesterday. It was pretty cold.
Except for the nude swim coming up. Have you got plans to do that this year? How's the preparation looking? Is it looking like it's going to be a massive event, as we come out of COVID, people getting back together again?
I think it's going to be huge. I don't know what numbers that they're getting in the registrar. I don't know how many people are swimming this year, but I know that registrations booked out almost straight away. One of the guys from Dark Mofo came into the cafe about an hour after it opened, and he said, "Are you doing it this year, John?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You better get in there feeling fast." So I just registered probably within 2 hours of it opening, and I noticed that its registrations are full now. So There seems to be a lot more enthusiasm now than there was however many years ago when it started, that's for sure.
I always thought that these sorts of events would be the sort of event I'd want to do where I could guarantee that I know no one there. It's not the sort of thing I'd want to be doing with my friends necessarily. How do you do it, or is it all, it's just what you do?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I think more or less I agree with you, but in the second year, we get invited to do a coffee stall. So we went down and we set up a coffee stall. And one of our staff was down there, my wife and I and Howie, one of our staff was down there. And I'm not sure what he was expecting, but with 5 minutes to go, I sort of downed tools, ripped off my kit, and then went for a swim. And Howie, I don't think he looked at me the same after that. So I think maybe maybe you're right. You just do it on your own. You quietly stand there. But I do notice a lot of groups of, and I think they're people who are down here for Dark Mofo more than locals that are sort of coming down here for a big event. They'll do it almost like a group bonding thing. I was down there one year and there was a bunch of girls that were doing it together, and I heard them say to a bloke, "Oh, here you go, can you take the camera and take a photo of us?" I sort of scratched my head about that and thought, yeah, fair enough, whatever. But yeah, it's not the sort of thing you do normally, is it? Ask a strange bloke you've never met to take a photo of you and your friends with no clothes on, but it's different rules down there, I think.
I guess, yeah. I guess all bets are off if you're just doing it, for the first time, and you're never going to do it again. Just see what happens. Yeah. It's a funny event because I've now seen it. There's a Canberra equivalent now in Lake Burley Griffin, which would be nice and cold as well.
It'd be like cold, I reckon.
Well, yeah, it was. I think they're talking about 10 degrees, but the air temperature is probably going to be even colder as well.
That'd be nasty.
So I don't know of any Sydney equivalents, but Sydney's actually very pleasant. I had a swim on the weekend and it was great. The water. I mean, I was clothed, mind you, but the water temperature is still very pleasant up here. So that's really interesting. And so, how do you plan on continuing doing these into the future? Is this kind of your thing now?
Look, my wife's in the background nodding her head very vigorously. Look, I think so. If the Dark Mofo one gets too big, I was thinking about it last year where I just went and did it. I think, it's actually quite a nice thing to do to sort of celebrate the shortest day, the longest night. And yeah, look, I probably will do, even if the Dark Mofo one gets really big and too big to be able to sort of register or book. I'll probably do it anyway. I live on the water. It's pretty easy to do, although my sons just give me the most horrified look. Yeah.
Well, if you live on the water, I mean, you might as well.
Yeah. Most of Hobart's on the water, isn't it? It's a pretty beautiful place.
And is this you kind of an adrenaline junkie? Is this the sort of thing that you do other crazy events like this?
My wife's rolling her eyes now. I would have said no, not really, but yeah, probably. I don't know what else. I can't think of too many off the top of my head, but it was just an event. It was probably as much as anything that friend of mine, Peter, who I think it was the last year before he retired as sort of a very senior legal official. As much as anything, it was him just saying, this is going to be something that you'll be able to talk about in 20 years' time. And I thought, you know what, that's probably a good way to think about it. So that's probably how I think about it now.
And I guess if you've got a whole bunch of people nude on the beach, you can't really tell the difference between the very senior legal official and anybody else. It's all very equalising.
Absolutely. Just a big, blurry, wobbly mass. Oh, yeah, it's pretty funny.
It's really quite funny. Oh well, I hope it goes well this year. Is Dark Mofo? It's an established part of the calendar down there in Hobart now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, look, be interesting to see how it goes this year. It wasn't on last year, and the year before, every year, but even more so, it's just embraced by the local community. All the businesses sort of put up red displays in their window, and so, it gets so many people out on the street in Hobart, whereas before Dark Mofo, everyone just hibernated in winter, whereas now, you just put on a thermal and a balaclava and a big jacket and some ski boots, and you get out there, and it's totally changed Hobart over winter. And I think that's the biggest credit to the Dark Mofo team, as well as it being sort of really arty and a great festival, most of which is probably way over my head. I'm just a bloody bogan, but it gets a lot of people. Get so many people in Hobart outside in the middle of winter, which not many other events can do, even though a few are tried. But yeah, and that's a huge credit to Lee Carmichael and the Dark Mofo team. It really is. They've just changed Hobart in winter. So hats off to them. I'll continue to support them.
It'll probably be a big year because, there's a lot of local tourism going on right now. You can't go overseas. I imagine, I'm not sure, I imagine a lot of Tasmanians are staying fairly local. It's probably going to be a big year for just the local people in Hobart to get out and do it.
Look, I hope so. My favourite Dark Mofo was the first one because no one really knew what to expect, and it was mostly local people, and they had all these things where they had a winter feast where they just had hundreds of fire barrels, 44-gallon drums full of wood, and all the local people were out, and you could just almost every fire barrel you'd go to, there'd be someone else you knew, and just having a chat with your friends. It's sort of 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night in the middle of winter. It's absolutely freezing. Everyone was rugged up, and everyone was having a great time, and just the excitement and the sense of anticipation of what's it about. I guess now, having seen Dark Mofo 6 or 7 times, that sense of surprise probably isn't there, which I'm guessing is a big challenge for the Dark Mofo guys. But if it goes back to being a little bit more local this year and a little bit smaller, I think that'd be a fantastic thing. I don't know that Dark Mofo ticket sales would agree with that, but when it was just a local event in that first year, it was so exciting. It was just like, wow, what are they going to do next? Wow. It was a great time.
And the cafe does well during Dark Mofo, A, because of the number of people there, and B, because they get to see that nude guy from down at the beach.
Look, I don't know about part B there, but part A, that might scare a few people off, actually. I had one year where I was just running out of the beach and you had to queue up to hand your towels back, and I just stopped and looked up, and there was about 3 of my customers standing there right in front of me. We all sort of looked at each other, then eyes up and like, hi, nice swim. Yeah, good swim. And that was it, and it's never been mentioned again.
Yeah, it's certainly a point of conversation. Hey, didn't I see you down at the nude swim? Yeah, I don't know whether it's not an opening line, is it?
Yeah, no, it's you don't go there. We had one year, I think it was the second year. About half an hour, maybe it wasn't half an hour, but a long time before anyone took off their clothes, there was one bloke stripped off all his kit, and he strutted along the beach, and you could see why. He had muscles bulging out absolutely everywhere, and he had this schlong that was halfway down to his knees. He just walked up and down the beach, and the initial reaction was you show off, and then the second reaction was, you know what, if I look like that, I'd probably do
it too.
Yeah. It's a pretty impressive looking human being, that bloke.
He's doing well. It was probably only like 3 degrees as well. So.
Yeah, it was impressive. Yeah.
Yes, I guess I imagine you get your mix of poses, and it's a mass event, so it's kind of hard to attract just nervous people. Probably not particularly keen on getting out there. Yeah,
and I noticed in the last year or two, some people doing it as a charity event. That I'm stripping off for whatever the charity cause was.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting too. Yeah.
Oh, well,
not sure exactly what I think about that, but if they're supporting good charities and people are prepared to support them. I guess that's fantastic.
Well, it's a bit of extra motivation, isn't it, to do something that you wouldn't normally do?
Yeah, it probably means that it's something, I'd really like to do that, but I'm not sure about it. You probably won't back out if you've taken donation.
That's right. It'll tip you over the edge. Do you wear a
Yeah.
swimming cap as well? Like, does everybody go out in
Yeah,
a
you
sea
bet.
of swimming caps? Yeah.
Oh, they're collector's items.
Yeah.
So Dark Mofo, as in their usual style, each year prints out some fantastic. They're red with black writing, and I think one year they said Crack of Dawn, another year it was Nude Swim, then other years it says equally pithy sort of messages.
Yep.
And the first year when the police tried to cancel it, they Dark Mofo put these like police warning signs all over the place, and in big letters said "Caution: Public nudity." I
Look
think they all
out.
got knocked off as souvenirs. People stole them as souvenirs. It was
Of course they did.
amazing at publicity, those Dark Mofo guys. They're so clever. So clever.
Oh, that's really great. It sounds like a fun event, apart from
That's a
everything
hoot.
else.
Oh, look, it's an absolute hoot. An absolute hoot. It is just such fun. And maybe when it was a bit small, it was a little bit more so, and now it's sort of bigger, a little bit less so. But that first year when they just rolled up the roller door and we all just started screaming and hurting and ran out of there, probably one of the more exciting experiences of my life. It was just, wow! We had no idea what was going to happen. We just ran. It was fantastic.
So where does everyone go afterwards? You can't just fold back into the city, or are there associated events?
A few people organise, depending whether it's on the weekend or during the week. There's a few cafes around there, and I know that they get booked out for breakfast. But if it's during the week, I've usually got to go back to work.
Oh,
So, yeah.
well, at least
If
you're
it's during
pretty
the-
awake.
Oh, you're absolutely awake. Yeah.
Can't think of that's about the most bracing wake up call that I think possible.
Yeah, a bit better than a cold shower. It's wow, you're alive.
You know you're alive. Oh, it's amazing. So this year I think the solstice is on a Monday. So
Well, I think you're right. Yeah,
you're going to start your week that way, and then go straight into the cafe and hopefully serve a bunch of people some form of warm drink to get them warm again.
yeah. I hope so. Yeah, quite a few of our customers do it now. So I haven't heard anyone talk about it. Oh, no, it's not true. A couple of blokes have said they've entered, but there hasn't been a lot of talk about it yet. Hopefully a few of our customers do it, and we'll be able to serve them coffee. I'll tea or hot chocolates afterwards. That'd be nice.
Oh, you should get a commission or something.
Oh, yeah, I'll have a chat to Luke Carmichael, see what he thinks.
Yeah, see what they say.
The richest man.
One year they capped entries, or they sort of, I think they closed entries before, it might have been the second year, they closed entries so that if you weren't entered, you weren't allowed in it. But it's a public beach. So everyone was down on the beach getting ready with their caps, and they put down big fire pits, and everyone stands around, or fire barrels. And just before they were about to blow the whistle, a couple of people ripped their kit off up on the grassy bank, and they just they ran through everyone and they dived in. Because they obviously hadn't been able to enter, but they didn't want to miss out. And we were watching those people running past us. And I thought that was fantastic that they wanted to do it that badly that they just stripped off and ran down and didn't stop them that they weren't entered.
Well, yeah, it's a public beach.
Yeah, it is a public beach, and even though you're not allowed to swim nude on the public beach, I guess the fact that everyone else is means that they can't really stop anyone doing it.
Well, I look forward to the police trying to find the particular nude people that aren't supposed to be there, trying to sort them through.
I think they'd probably, just walk away from that. Nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Mhm.
It's funny to think that just 6 or 7 years ago it was banned. I mean, it's sort of it's a little bit out there, but it's not that out there. It's it's
Oh, is it? No, it is a bit odd. I think possibly the police will put in a bit of a spot just because some of the residents sort of complained and said, well, it is illegal to, nudity in public. What are you going to do about it? And so I think that sort of forced the police's hand a little bit. I don't think they really wanted to get involved, and I think they were fairly keen to let the negotiation happen so that we were allowed to do it. I don't know what they did to get around it. I've got no idea. I just know that a couple of days before it happened, they said, yeah, you can do it. So, I feel a bit for the police. I don't think they sort of made some decision based on moral outrage. I think that they just were forced into it because I think at the time a lot of the locals, or some of the locals, I better be careful there, some of the locals said, oh, we don't want all these nude people down on our beach. And they probably made some complaints, which I guess they're allowed to do. It is interesting. And now it's sort of, there'll be thousands of people down there when only 6 or 7 years ago, you're right, that people wanted it banned and stopped.
Well, probably half the police are doing it now.
Yeah, there'll be police down there, fireys, and there's all sorts of people. It's fantastic. It gets bigger every year.
Oh, it's great. Well, I imagine this year there might be some limits because of COVID. They probably can't have too many people in the one spot, but into the future they might be able to up the numbers. Or I mean, you hope it doesn't get too commercial, right? It'd be a shame if there was the 7 a.m. wave and the 8 a.m. wave. You'd hope it still maintains some of its spontaneity.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I'd forgotten. In the first year, they did the nude swim, and then half an hour later, I think they did what they called the prude swim. So for anyone that wanted to do it, that didn't want to take their clothes off.
Oh,
And that only happened once. That never happened again.
Right. Okay.
I think, yeah.
That's quite funny actually. Nude and prude swim. That's not a bad gimmick.
It wasn't a bad gimmick, but I don't think many people were really interested in doing the prude swim. It's sort of absolutely freezing cold. There's no sort of element of, wah!
Yeah.
It's just going for a swim in the cold. It never happened again. In fact, I'd forgotten about it till you mentioned it just then. You made me think of it. But yeah, that first year they had the nude swim and the prude swim.
It's very funny. It's a good concept. There's obviously a lot of history and a lot of stories around this, which is great. It's good people are getting out and doing it. I imagine the lifesavers have a pretty decent job as well, just keeping people warm. Everybody reacts differently to the cold. There's probably a whole bunch of space blankets out at the end and all that.
Oh, absolutely. I remember in the first year, I sort of dived in and swam out and swam around and swam out all the way out to the lifesavers and then just a high five. And then I turned around and all of a sudden I realised, you know what, I'm really, really cold and I'm not sure I'm going to make it back. I obviously did. And I sort of, once I could touch my foot on the ground, I sort of bounced my way out. But you're right, the lifesavers would have to be aware of all of that sort of stuff and to be keeping an eye out on everyone. It must be a little bit daunting for them, not knowing how each person's going to react. And in the first year, look, if anything had happened, there were probably as many lifesavers as there were as swimmers. But yeah, the last time there were, I can't remember the exact number, but it was probably at least 1,000 people swimming. And I wouldn't have thought that there's any way that the lifesavers could, I don't know whether they used drones or whether they just used experience or whether they, I don't know what they did, but they're doing a pretty good job and it wouldn't be particularly easy to monitor that many people.
It'd be a highlight on their calendar, but also not necessarily one they'd want to do. I wouldn't have thought, because it'd be a tough gig with that many people. I don't imagine Hobart's beaches get get that many people even in the height of summer.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. The beach where it happens down at Sandy Bay, yeah, I'd say that's its busiest day for the year by a long way.
How
Yeah.
funny. The shortest day of the year in one of the coldest bits of Australia. Its busiest day is then. That's cool.
Yeah. But my wife's just showing me there were 2,000 people did it last year. So, in 2019, sorry, it wasn't online. There were 2 people did it last year. Well, I imagine a few other people did it last year as well at different times. There were 2,000 people in 2019. So, what you're saying about the lifeguards, it would have been, a huge job to try and look after 2,000 people. Wow. Yeah.
Are there any treacherous ocean conditions there? Like, is there a wave break, or is it pretty flat? Is that not an issue?
But it's usually pretty flat. If you get a big southerly swell come up, there'll be, I don't know, there might be a 3-foot wave there, but by and large it's pretty flat. You're a fair way up the Derwent River by the time you get there. I think probably your biggest risk is if it rains a lot and you get stormwater, probably get water contamination. But like I was mentioning earlier, the Bridgewater Jerry. The Bridgewater Jerry is just hideous. It's just the cold air that just drains down from the Derwent Valley, which is basically the Central Highlands, and it just drains down, and it's absolutely freezing. I think they've had the Bridgewater Jerry running 1 year, and I think it was probably well below zero. The air temperature was well below zero that year.
You get in the water to warm up.
Pretty much.
Oh, well, I hope they light fires on the beach and do all that sort of, have mobile heaters and all that.
They light a lot of fires. They do light a lot of fires, but as you get more and more people, it's harder and harder to get a spot around the fire. In the first year, there were heaps of fires, and everyone was sort of standing in groups of sort of half a dozen around a fire, which is pretty effective. But when you get 2,000 people on the beach, you don't get too close to a fire.
No.
One thing I would want to mention is in that first year, Damon Thomas was the mayor at the time, and not exactly sure what happened, but I think the night before he was having dinner with the Buddhist monks for reasons I don't know. I've got no idea why I was having dinner with them, but he said to them, "Oh, do you want to bring your drums down to the beach tomorrow?" And they said, "Yeah." And so the Buddhist monks were down there with all their big drums, and they drummed us in. And Damon Thomas is no longer mayor, hasn't been mayor for years, but the Buddhists still come down with their drums every year and just bang us in. That's become part of the tradition.
And that's part of it.
Yeah. The other thing about the mayor is the first year it happened, I said there was heaps of media there, and they were looking for someone to talk to. So I was sort of getting out of there and shivering and shaking, and so were most other people. But poor old Damon Thomas had a towel around his waist, bare-chested, because all the media were trying to interview him. And good luck to him. I reckon he stood there for about half an hour, and it must have been very close to zero. And he stood there patiently, sort of was interviewed by all the media, and stood there with a smile on his face, basically no clothes, as they interviewed him one after the other. And I thought, good on you, Damon. And I'm sure he did it just to promote Hobart. I was in admiration of Damon Thomas that day.
You've got his chest is the unofficial symbol of Hobart from that era.
Pretty much. You find photos of it everywhere. Him standing there, very chested, patiently giving media interviews as his feet went blue, and he must have been cold. Oh, it was cold that year.
Well, yeah, I'll be careful with my Google searches then if I search your name up, and you never know what I'll find if I do that search.
Yeah, I think most of the photos that go up they've been taken from a good angle so as not to embarrass the people that they're taken off. So I think you'd be pretty right.
Yeah, they're not really trying to identify anybody.
No, there's some pretty graphic images from the backs of wobbly bottoms, but you can't see any faces. I think when they take photos the other way, they just show photos of faces and nothing else. So I think the media's pretty good about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not really in anybody's interests to embarrass people, is it?
No.
There are some crazy photos, like the number of people doing it. Is just the sea of humanity there. I've just looked them up now on my phone. It's just crazy.
Yeah, when I registered this year, they had some photos of the event. It must have been last year, and it was absolutely amazing watching all the people from overhead, watching all the people diving into the water. It just looked like a school of dolphins or a school of fish or something. There were so many people diving in. It looked amazing.
I don't know how you do it. It's pretty funny. Oh,
Don't stop moving. There's the clue. Don't stop. You just keep running till your head's wet. Then you turn around and you get out.
Oh, that's very funny. Oh, well, good. Oh, it's great that you've been there since the start too. That's really nice. You've been there since the start.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And Dark Mofo is wonderful. Just want to support those guys as much as anything else.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you very much to John Stagg for taking us through the nude swim, the Dark Mofo Nude Solstice Swim, which he has done every year since its inception, and will be doing again in a couple of weeks. If you'd like any more information about anything you've heard in this podcast, including information on the Dark Mofo Nude Solstice Swim, maybe you want to do it yourself, or the Canberra Solstice Swim, which I am seriously considering doing having heard John's stories, then get over to the website at www.thepodpodcast.net. That's www.thepodpodcast.net. Thanks again to John, and thanks for listening in. I'll catch you on the next one.